Hypnosis with real clients facing genuine issues. Brought to you by the hypnotherapist demanded by celebrities, CEOs, and even royalty, Adam Cox. These recordings took place live from Adam's clinic in London's world-famous Harley Street. So, get yourself comfortable and enjoy today's episode of The Hypnotist.
Now, I don't know if you are an investor or a trader, but if you are, you will appreciate how important managing your emotions are when it comes to being a good trader and a good investor. In fact, fear and greed are two of the strongest emotions that you can get, but they're not the only emotions. You can have anger, you can have frustration, you can have impatience. And I was working with a client that would revenge trade. Revenge trade is kind of chasing your losses. It's losing a trade and then trying to make that back quickly. And the problem with that is that quite often it leads to inferior decision making and throwing out a proven strategy. And that was the case with the client that I was working with. They had a strategy that if they followed it diligently would make profit 70% of the time. But if they revenge traded and did the emotional trading, they would place bigger bets and they would have a lower quality criteria to make trades. And that would only make profit 30% of the time. So this uses the analogy of it being a test of their resolve, like how capable are they of being unshakable in the sense of these things that could rattle other people, and to not fall into the trap of being baited to become a gambler when really what they wanted to be was an analytical trader, and they could really take pride in being this analytical trader. So this may be a bit too specialist if you don't invest or you're not a trader. I love investing. I love particularly active trading where I'm setting like buy orders, sell orders, checking my positions. Not everyone is like this, but the client that I was working with, they did what I do, but they do it on a daily basis. They're trying to make profit every single day. I'm a more long-term investor, but the psychology is still the same. It's about effectively making a trade, mitigating risk, making good decisions, and following your thesis, following your strategy, and trying to avoid those kind of overly emotional, intuitive responses. So if this resonates, you'll get some value from this session. And if it doesn't and you want something a bit more bespoke for you, have a look at the link in the description and schedule a free consultation call with me. For now, though, find a quiet, comfortable place where you won't be disturbed, relax, and enjoy the session. And I wonder if you could breathe in even deeper than you normally would. Really feeling your diaphragm and chest expand. And as you exhale, just imagine elongating that outward breath so it enables you to drift deeper and further and more relaxed. And as your body relaxes, your imagination awakens. And I want you to imagine what it would be like to be walking on the coast. And I want you to imagine seeing the calm ocean. And I want you to imagine thinking that if you had a small boat, it is completely safe and enjoyable to take that small boat out on the ocean when the seas are calm and the weather is good. But then imagine the clouds turning grey. I want you to imagine winds, storms, and I want you to imagine seeing those waves, high, strong, volatile. And I want you to get the feeling that what is a great decision when the waves are calm, it becomes a reckless decision to take the boat out onto the ocean when the waves are strong and intense and unpredictable. And I want you to get a feeling that sometimes your emotions feel like the volatile waves. And in the same way that it wouldn't make sense to take a boat out onto the ocean until the waves have calmed down, I want you to feel that you are planting a seed of an idea that to be a stoic, analytical trader, it's important not to trade during an emotional storm. And I want you to get a feeling that you're planting that seed of an idea that if you are feeling emotional, the strategy is not to take the boat out onto the waves, but to allow time for the waves to calm back down again. And now imagine the waves doing that. The calm, smooth waves, sunny weather and blue skies. And now it becomes a perfect time to take that small boat back out onto the waves. I want you to get a feeling that what is a great decision can also be a horrible decision, even though the ocean is exactly the same. I want you to feel it's the conditions that can make it good or bad, but also the size of your boat. I want you to get a feeling that you're now there, perhaps closer to the ocean, seeing the calm, gentle waves. Imagine hearing those waves. And I want you to feel that your body is getting deeper and deeper relaxed. And then imagine seeing a door just there by the ocean, but not connected to a building. Maybe a wooden door, a metal door. Imagine the frame. Imagine the door and the handle. And it's weird because it shouldn't even be standing up straight. And it dawns on you this is a portal that will take you to your own private cinema, to give you a new perspective on a useful change that would be good to make. As I count from 5 to 1, you will imagine standing in front of that door, opening the door, walking through the door, and walking into your very own private cinema. 5, putting your hand on the handle. 4, turning the handle. 3, opening the door. 2, walking through the door. And 1, closing the door behind you. As you now found yourself no longer by the ocean, but in your own private cinema. No one else is there. And I want you to find the most comfortable seat with the perfect view of the screen. And I want you to imagine seeing yourself there on that screen. The last time you felt on tilt, triggered, angry perhaps because a trade didn't go your way. But you're not in your body, you're just the observer. And I wonder if you could see yourself on that screen, evaluating something that didn't seem fair, right. It was unjust in some way. And maybe you can tell from your facial expression or your posture or the tension in your body that you were emotionally affected by that outcome. And then see that version of you triggered by that trade, revenge trading. See that version of you lowering standards and increasing bet sizes. That version of you is trying to do what every form of revenge does. That vigilante justice to right a wrong. But I want you to see, because you've increased your risk and reduced your standards, see that version of you deviating from your strategy. And I want you to see that person on screen shifting from being an analytical trader to a reckless gambler, perhaps within minutes. And I want you to see that version of you increasing the frequency of your trades, avoiding that discerning setup, impulsively trading, taking more risk. And if you can see that that version of you is decreasing your probability of success through that revenge trading, let me know by nodding your head. That's it. And I want you to imagine rewinding that very same thing and pausing it. But before we go back to that version of you, I want you to imagine you see someone else on that screen. Someone that you consider to be an unshakable trader. That chaos can happen, something unjust, unfair, and nothing would make them deviate from their system, their strategy. And once you see that version of that person, that unshakable person, I want you to imagine putting them on the receiving end of that same trade that triggered you. And maybe you can tell from their face that they've also evaluated the loss, the unfairness, but they're not triggered by it. Maybe you see them ambivalent, unbothered, unfazed, or maybe stoic. They accept the outcome happened that they didn't want. But that doesn't mean they're going to lose their cool. So imagine that unshakable trader in the same situation that you found yourself triggered. And if you feel that they're responding to it in a way that would be more useful for you, let me know by nodding your head. And I want you to see that version of them taking it on the chin, saying it's just the 30% that doesn't work out. No anger, no rage, no frustration, no annoyance. They treat it like the same way that someone would treat a bug hitting the front of a windscreen. Not even enough to stop the car. I want you to feel that when these trades don't go your way, you evaluate your process. If the process was the right process, then you can feel happy even if the outcome wasn't that which you desired. I want you to feel empowered, that actually these unfair things are tests and traps. Test to test your emotional strength to be unshakable when it matters. But the trap is that it baits you to deviate from your strategy. The market wants you to go on full tilt, to get emotional, to revenge trade, because when it does, the triggered person's money ends up flowing to the unshakable person. I want you to imagine going back to that version of you that you rewind it to the beginning. But this time, see a version of you that has the same facial expression, that same unshakable quality of that trader that would never take the bait. Imagine seeing the same thing happen and then try out two different scenarios. The first is that you see yourself looking angry or annoyed. But instead of revenge trading, see that version of you go for a walk, have a short workout, or maybe skip for 5 minutes or use the punch bag. And when you return, see that version of you almost like the ocean that was volatile and then found its calm. Or perhaps you can see yourself unflappable, unfazed. See that version of you where these things that triggered you in the past no longer do anymore. That you can consider it an ingredient into the same cake. That if you have a 70% win rate, then you will lose 30% of the time, and that's okay. And sometimes that will feel fair, and sometimes it will feel unfair. But you can put it in the same bucket of just being that 30% where it doesn't go your way, in order for you to be rewarded for the 70% of the time when it does. Because the alternative is that it baits you into becoming reckless, emotional, and like a gambler. But I want you to see a version of you that can see the bait but doesn't take it. Like an intelligent mouse seeing the cheese in the trap and deciding that that cheese is not valuable enough for the risk that it carries. And I want you to feel that the idea of instinctively revenge trading is like that cheese in that trap. It seems appealing, but it comes at a cost. And that cost is that you're willing to give away a 70% strategy in order to use a 30% strategy. And I want you to imagine another case where you're willing to give someone money where it makes no logical sense just because you're emotional. I want you to imagine having a bad meal. And because you had that bad meal, straight away you bought a worse meal and then ate the worse meal immediately afterwards. And that doesn't make sense when it comes to food. And it doesn't make sense when it comes to trading either. I want you to see that version of you on the screen, immune and unshakable. Nothing will make you take the bait of that revenge trade. You either carry on or you allow yourself to dissipate any emotions and let everything calm down. And just like that professional golf player or poker player, they don't let one bad hand or hole creep into the next one. And when you found a scenario that feels good for you, that it would work, that even if something unfair happens, you wouldn't take the bait. Just see that version of you on that cinema screen. Rewind it, step into the screen, and imagine yourself a week from now. Something happens similar, and either the thing doesn't bother you anymore, or if it does, it's a reminder to do something to calm your waves. And maybe you decide to have a rule. In the same way that the boat owner by the sea would say, I will never go into the water if there is a storm in the sea. And maybe you have a rule, something you add to your strategy to make you truly that analytical trader. That if you are too emotional, you don't trade. And only when you feel stoic and centered, rational and analytical, then you make that trade. And if your unconscious agrees, let me know by nodding your head. And I want you to imagine the worst thing that's ever happened in a trade happening in that moment, and still feel immune to taking that bait. These things are either tests to test your resilience and your resolve, or a trap to bait you into becoming a gambler. And from this point onwards, each time you see those things that triggered you in the past, you will either pass the test or refuse to take the bait. And in doing so, you become even more of that wise, calm, stoic, rational, analytical trader that you are at your core. No situation will bait you to becoming a gambler. And then imagine leaving that screen, seeing yourself on the screen, looking unshakable. I want you to see yourself looking more unshakable than that other person that you considered unshakable. And accept this is your compelling vision of the future. And every trigger is an opportunity to either become this unshakable analytical trader, or to allow your emotions to win and become the gambler. And whichever version of you reward more is the one you will get more of. But you know who you want to be, and that intention is already helping to lay the new neural pathways to create that possibility. So as you leave that cinema, Take this unshakable, analytical trader with you. You're almost looking forward to previous triggers so that you can hardwire this identity in. Because you can only feel unshakable if something tries to shake you. You can only refuse to take the bait if you're baited into that emotional version of you. So as you leave the cinema, find yourself back out there on the shore, but feeling a shift has taken place, feeling a sense of resolve, feeling a sense of empowerment, looking forward to being tested. And now it's time to float all the way back to your present, taking these changes with you. So take a deep breath in through your nose and out through your nose. Just wiggle your fingers and wiggle your toes, connect and calibrate into the here and the now. As I now count from 1 to 10 to awaken you. Starting to count. 1, 2, 3, waking up. 4, 5, 6, more alert. 7, 8, open your eyes, open your eyes. 9, 10, wide awake, wide awake, wide awake. Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode of The Hypnotist. And if you've enjoyed this show or got some benefit from it, you may know of one other friend or family member that may also benefit from this hypnosis session, in which case I'd like to ask a favor of you, and that is if you could spend 10 seconds to share this episode with someone that you know that may also benefit. That would really help me to access new people that don't already know about this show. Thank you very much for listening, and I will see you again on the next episode.